Hi there, Biney here. You are welcome to another session of the Power Automate Desktop series that we are working on. And in our previous session, we looked at the three methods that we can use to populate the text field that we have on our web page. But I mentioned that it's not like we have just these three methods. There may be other methods, but these are the ones that I wanted us to focus on. Using the populate text field on web page option, or using the keyboard technique where we focus on the field and then we send keys to effect that change, and then finally a little bit more of an advanced level where we use the JavaScript code to manipulate the text on the page. Today we are going to look at how we can select specific radio buttons on the page. Okay, so before we go on with that, let's move this code. So I'm going to create a subflow. It's not like you would have to create a subflow before you work on the radio buttons, but I just want to take this code off so that we get a clean slate, but then I don't want to get rid of the code entirely. Okay, so that we get it like this, and then we work with, we can always go back to the subflow one to have access to that code and bring them back, or direct the code to go and run there. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, let's look at how we can select the radio buttons. And to do that, the radio button also has an option that we can use to select over here. Then you target the UI element. So for instance, if it's a mail, that's what we want to do. Of course, I'm not going to do the wait for page to load. So when we select, of course, that was what was already selected, so we get that. Let's change that to a female and see what happens. Good, and it selects that. So whenever we do select male, that is what is selected. Whenever we do select female, that is what is selected. Let's notch it up another level. This is where you see we have a radio button may have multiple options. In our case, we have two, either it's a male or a female. So assuming that the person is a male, when you are filling multiple entries and then you would like to determine which button to select, of course you would have to find out whether what you are selecting is for a male or is for a female. If it is for a male, you have a button to select. If it's for a female, you have a particular button to select. And so an if statement will be required over here. So we have the conditionals. Okay, we have the conditionals action, so we can do if. So the condition is what? If. Okay, now we need to compare it with something, and so I'm going to set a variable first. Normally at this point you would have read data from somewhere and you'll be doing a comparison. So let me just put the male here and let me call this gender, so that when we come in here and we pick this, we'll say if gender equals male. Okay, So if gender equals male, it has what it will select. If it does not equals male, then it has what it will select. Okay, so let's put this in here and then change this to male. So if the gender is equal to male, then do this. What if it is not equal to that? What should be done? Okay, so in that case you could do an else, and now we can duplicate this and then change it to female. So essentially what we are saying is, if gender is equal to male, then select this. If it is not, then select that. Okay, let's run it and see. And we know the gender is male, so let's see what happens. Good, so it was equal to male, and so male was selected. Okay, what if we go and then change the value of gender to female? Let's go into the variable and make this female. So if it's equal to male, then this else do that. Okay, let's run it. Good, so this time gender was female, so that is what happened. Okay, gender is not male, so this was not run, rather it was this code that was run. Okay, so that is how you can actually manipulate the radio buttons on the page. At least one method. Okay, that is one method. Of course, you can also use JavaScript to do it. So for us to be able to use JavaScript to do that, okay, let's disable this, disable that, and then again go and bring our JavaScript option from here. And like we did in the previous video, type return, and then we do document dot get element. Is it having an ID? Let's inspect and see. So for our radio buttons, the radio button, they are having a label instead. Okay, label with the class radio option, and you can see that the input you can target it using the type radio and then the value over here. Okay, so we'll be targeting an input element that is a radio and has a value, maybe male, or we set it to female. Okay, now let's run that and see. Yeah, so we've been able to set it from female to male. If we want to do that of the female too, we can just go in there and we can just change this to female, then we run it. Let's see if it changes back to female, and it did. One other thing that we can take note of is when using the query selector method that we've used here, we can leverage that part where we said you can do something like start with, okay, using the caret symbol. So for instance, it starts with the F, okay, so that should work. Assuming I set it to mail and then I run this, let's see if it works. Good, so it works. In the same manner, I can just tell it that it starts with an M. When I run it, it works. That is beautiful. All right, one more thing. Instead of using the start with, there's also the contains. Remember, this is just a recap of what we did the other time. So the caret allows us to start with. The asterisk, the star symbol, helps us to say it contains. Then there is the dollar that helps us to say it ends with, so in this case it will be an E. Obviously, two of them are ending with E, so it wouldn't be advisable to use that, okay? So I would say we target the first letter, start with, and stuff like that, okay? Another thing that we can do is, instead of putting this there, assuming you have lots of options for the radio button, are you going to change each and every one like that? No, it becomes an issue. So what you can do is you can then leverage the variable that is picking from the data source, and then you just put it here. So in our case, the variable is the gender. We just put it there, and let's test it and see. So whatever that variable holds at a point in time is what is going to set, and currently the variable holds female. So let's run it and see. You see, it works. And with this beautiful method, you need not come and bother yourself with if, then, else, such that if you have a whole lot of them, you are now going to write an if condition that caters for each of the options. No, this just one line caters for all the other options that may be available with your radio button or whatever it is that you are trying to set, okay? So I think this is in my opinion, the best to use. Of course, we can also work with the UI element option that we did earlier. That is by selecting the radio button, but here is the catch. Okay, I'm going to run that. So let me disable this JavaScript option, and then we'll still go ahead and use this radio button. Let me just put it up here and then enable it. So we are going to actually use that. It may read as female, but then with what I'm going to do, it will not necessarily be picking a female. It will pick as and when it's a female. If it's a male, it will pick a male. Alright, so let's go in here and then modify the code that we have here, okay? Modify the code that we have here. Essentially, I'm just going to put this very code that we have here in there. Good. So I'll come and edit this, or if I like, I can just pick a new one, just so I don't mess up what we already have. Let me just grab. Once I've grabbed that, it will be added here. Then instead of this name, let me call it RDBTN, something like that. Good. So with that, I just come in there, go and then edit the code. So with the code, we said we are pasting this, an input with the value that picks this. Okay, so an input element with that kind of value is what we are targeting. Good. And I'll clear what is there and see if it works. Test, test. Gonna ask me for that. Okay, so let's target female. Good. So it actually found it. Okay, let's test it again. Male. Oh, male. Found it. Test it for female. I think for the female I didn't see there, so I'm going to test that again. Good. So this tells me that it will be able to dynamically pick the radio buttons. So if I have 100 of them, I need not create separate one. Okay, so I'll just come here and change this to the, where is it, radio button selector, and we are good to go. So when we run it, voila. So if we change it to male, let's see what happens. Now the variable holds male. So yeah, so essentially instead of doing the if then else or whatever, I believe these two, using the JavaScript and then manipulating the selector to dynamically pick the variable name, works very fine. Okay, thank you, and then see you in the next session.